Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. I'd like to welcome you to your Design Your Future panel. I am Christy Marcella, Executive Director with the Jacobs Center for Neighborhood Innovation. We've been working in Southeastern San Diego for over 25 years, focusing on improving the community through physical development, economic development, and community engagement. We've partnered with the San Diego Architectural Foundation and Open House San Diego, which is happening this weekend, to really bring this panel to you to discuss careers that are creative, that are exciting, that help build communities physically and help change communities economically and socially. So I am very honored to be joined by such a great diverse group of panelists who are going to talk to you all about their career journeys, projects that they've worked on, in the hopes that you all might be inspired to pursue some of these areas and industries as you contemplate as the future and the next generation of community changers, what you might want to do, quote unquote, when you grow up. I still don't know, and I'm nearly 40 years old, but it's a constant learning process. So I hope this might be one of the avenues that you can pursue to get a better idea of the opportunities that are available to you. I'm very excited to be able to introduce our moderator, Eric Henson, Policy Advisor for the City of San Diego's District 4 office, the office of Monica Montgomery Steppe. Eric, welcome.
Hello, everybody. As Christy had mentioned, I'm Eric Henson. I'm Policy Advisor for Councilmember Monica Montgomery Steppe. First and foremost, I'm also a native San Diegan, born and raised in the area we know as Southeast San Diego, in a neighborhood called Choya's View. I used to live on 45th and Market Street, actually near Governor's Academy and in high school. So I want to give a shout out to some of our viewers that are in that area. So pretty much from there, I just want to note that a policy advisor, it's a fancy word for someone that does homework on different subjects and provides advice to a council member or a politician, in general, depending on what government you focus on. So I provide advice on how we use land use in our district or just land and information on environmental impacts in our community, and also the building of housing, all together. So what excited me, city planning? First and foremost, I'm a skateboarder. A lot of people may not see that connection. And for me, it throughout the community, seeing vacant lots and what could we turn them into? For me, it was for a place to skateboard, to see them all over the Southeastern area in general, and always want to use this opportunity to transform it into something. In this slide right here, you see there's title for Project New Village, and it's an organization that's very instrumental in some of the work I do in the office. Next slide. So the other thing about planning that excited me is college was very formative for years coming up. One thing that I got a takeaway from is actually there was something I read, property tax being the most of the funding for education, and the schools I had gone to, they weren't as well represented as other schools in parts of San Diego. And when I was able to read that information, it all made sense. If you have an area that's dependent on its property tax, because that's most of education, and your area is producing enough money, the services, aren't well represented compared to other areas of the city. So that's like what really kind of catapulted me to want to know more about what we call urban studies and planning, which promises not studying hip hop. That's, people have brought it up to me before, but it's actually pretty much the study of land and law around land. And the good thing about this is it all ties into our panelists today, and planners have to know a little bit about everything. So we have to know a little bit about engineering and the functions that underground, right, to to have a functional building, we have to know the different phases of construction, which is what some of the people here, and also design. We look at the architectural aspect. So the next slide on here shows this large map of San at large, and it's 810 vacant lots that majority in Southeastern Mexico, which is what I brought up earlier. And to me, it's almost like a thing. You see these vacant lots, you want them to be transformed into something desirable. Moving further, at the end of my slide here, I actually share something district. So on 45th and actually 42nd Street, not far from where I used to live, it's going to be transformed into a community garden and also a grocery store that will workforce there. And it will also have some housing set aside. And to see it go from the vacant that it was to a community garden and building around that community garden to have a local grocery store, vendors and restaurants, it's something that's, relevant to the things that we're going to talk about here today, and hear about people's patterns as to like why they the fields that they did. So without taking up too much time, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Her Carmen Van with B in Builders, which is awesome name. And I'd like to give her the chance to introduce herself right now. Can you share your perspective for me?
Sure. Thank you so much, Eric. So yeah, my name is Carmen Van. I'm a construction executive with B in Builders. I've been building in San Diego and actually the country for over 25 years. Specifically in here in San Diego for about 20 years. I'm excited to be here in particular to perhaps expose you to an industry that you may not be familiar with and hopefully inspire you to be an active participant in designing your future. Next slide. A little bit of history about myself and pictures. So I was born and raised in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Unlike Eric, I'm not from here originally, but I do claim San Diego as home now. But I grew up in DC in a time when it was considered the murder capital of the country, as we averaged like 1.2 murders a day. I grew up in an area that was considered at risk. So my mom put me in programs to pretty much keep my time occupied. And so I was exposed to architecture and construction through a summer program through the Smithsonian, where we learned about all types of great architecture in DC. It was a great place to really study and explore architecture. And then we would, in essence, discuss how things get built. So much so, you see in that first picture, or second picture, I built my first batter board for a foundation when I was 10 years old. And that really sparked something in me. I really knew at that point that I really wanted to have a career doing something that yielded construction or structures. My mom, though, encouraged me to explore other interests. So I got into a program that allowed me to explore things like electrical engineering and robotics. And then I went to a pre-engineering high school. But when it was time, though, to choose my major, I chose architectural engineering. And I headed to North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, North Carolina. But then when I got into school, after a couple of years, I determined that construction management had a stronger draw for me. So you're going to hear from some engineers today and some architects. But for me, I enjoyed the idea of construction management. So what exactly is construction management? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's overseeing the planning and execution of construction projects and involves managing trades, managing the schedule, managing the cost and quality, and sometimes even managing the design. So for me, I was a critical thinker. I was a problem solver. I was a planner. I knew I was a natural leader, and I liked engaging with people. So for me, construction management seemed like a good fit. Next slide, please. So after school, I began my career in New Jersey. I'm an East Coast girl, like I mentioned, and I became really proficient in scheduling work, meaning that I would deconstruct the project in small activities and organize those activities into logical sequencing with some activity durations. And what I did to begin my career, I oversaw schedule operations on several projects from New Jersey to Nashville, Tennessee. But I was tired of cold weather being from the East Coast, and thankfully San Diego doesn't have much of that. So I moved out here to San Diego. Next slide, please. And that is when my career took some major leaps and bounds. When I got here, I went from managing just the schedule to managing all aspects of projects. And then I was managing multiple teams. And I've been fortunate to have led efforts on some incredible projects throughout San Diego. Projects that have provided educational facilities in Grossmont Union High School District and Sweetwater Union High School District. The bottom left picture shows you the district office for Grossmont Union High School District. I've done projects that have provided housing. Right there, third top is the Park 12 apartment facility, 37 stories, over 700 housing units. And then right to the right of that is 1050B, which is an affordable housing project that provided really high quality affordable housing for our working community and our working class. I've done office spaces like the Semper headquarters project in the middle of the top row as well. But I feel like my claim to fame personally is having the privilege of leading all construction efforts on the San Diego New Central Library in downtown San Diego. And for me, what was so important about that project, as with other projects, is that it did so much to the community. And I think for me, what construction does, it helps me connect the communities that I build in and provide them with services, whether it be housing, office, education, that stays with them forever. So next slide. So why are we talking to you today about designing your future? Because quite frankly, no one else is going to do it for you. It's worth it to you to discover your passions and invest your time in painting a picture of what your future looks like and working towards that end. I hope that I've piqued your interest in architecture, engineering, or the construction industry, but if I haven't, that's okay. Just remember that you owe it to yourself to design your future, and your future always begins with what you do now. I was just a kid from Northeast DC, and because I took some time to really design my future, I'm living my best life. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth the fight. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions today, but for now, I'll hand it back over to Eric.
Armin, I'm very by like all the things that you had shared, and again, with the theme of designing your future, we do have another native San Diegan coming up. His name is Edgar Camarino, and he's one with one of the premier engineering firm in San Diego, Rick Engineering. Edgar, please share your story. Oh, Edgar.
Edgar, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Eric. Computer issues, love them. Again, my name is Edgar Camarino. I am a principal at Rick Engineering Company and work in our Public Works Department. I actually manage our transportation division. I am a native San Diego, like Eric mentioned, born and raised, wouldn't want to live anywhere else. We have such a beautiful city. I attended San Diego State University, first in my family to graduate from college. And that's where I have had to obtain my Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I've worked really only at 2 places in my entire career. My first job was with Caltrans here in San Diego as an intern, and then as a full-time civil engineer. And about 25 years ago, I decided to join Rick Engineering Company, and really the rest is history. When it comes to transportation, my specialty really is design of freeways, highways, roadways, you name it, anything that's involved with transportation, that is what I do, and I love it. But our company in general works not only on transportation projects and public work projects, but we also work a lot on development projects, and I'll go over some of those projects here right now. So next slide is the West Mission Bay Drive Bridge Replacement Project. Now, so this is really what piques my interest in civil engineering. I always love to see how things were constructed, but I really like to draw. And so that's why I'm really on design end. But this project is The largest capital improvement project that the city of San Diego has ever pushed out, and it's over $100 million. These are renderings of the West Mission Bay Drive Bridge replacement projects. They were actually prepared by Steppe and Alfonso, you'll hear from him later on. The bridge engineer was T. Lynn International, the Rick Engineering Company, and my team led the charge with the civil engineering side. It's going to be 2 bridges, 3 lanes in the northbound and the southbound direction, and then you'll see in the bottom left corner separate pedestrian and bicycle facilities actually on the bridge. So when you look at the next slide, you're going to see this is the northbound lane structure being under construction, and we actually had to build a bridge And so what you see on the lower part is a trestle bridge, and that's what they use to construct the actual bridge. And so when you go to the next slide, it's pretty awesome. It's gone now. The trestle bridge is gone. The northbound lanes, the easterly structure is now built, and you can actually drive on it. And what they're going to do now is build the westerly bridge, the other 3 lanes, and they're going to do the same thing all over again. They'll build a trestle, and then they'll build the westerly bridge. And so when you go to the next slide, when I talk about development, we have, our hands in a lot of things throughout our region over our 65+ year history. Single family residential, multifamily, commercial, and industrial. And this is a great project. In Southeast San Diego, a lot of you know, this is Market Creek Plaza and the Jacob Center. We worked on those award-winning projects. We did all the civil engineering, worked with the Jacobs Foundation. Really proud to work on these projects. And then the next slide, you'll see some of the more intricate areas of not only the Jacob Center, but Market Creek Plaza. And also in Southeast San Diego, when you go to the next slide, is recently constructed modification to the 94 Euclid Interchange, where we had removed the State Route 94 eastbound to southbound Euclid move and put all the vehicles onto that loop ramp, and then we signalized both intersections to make it a much safer and more highly operable interchange. And so that's really what I do. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Eric to introduce our next panel member.
Thank you, Edgar, for that great presentation. The next part that's up on our list is Alfonso Varagan. He's an architect with Softy Rabinus Architects. And how are you, Alfonso?
All right, well, thanks everyone for being here. Like I mentioned, my name is Alfonso Varagan. I'm from Tijuana, from Mexico, so south of the border. And I graduated high school in Tijuana and moved to San Diego for my college education. And so it has been 6 years since graduating the New School of Architecture. And so my pathway started actually at a community college. Many of you may know it. It's Southwestern College down in Chula Vista. Then after 3 years, I transferred to New School of Architecture located at downtown San Diego. That was in 2011 and graduated in 2014. So right after graduating, I got a job at Softy Rabinus Architects, for which I didn't know them that well. I just knew some of the projects that they were designing, and I really enjoy those designs. And as you all know, architecture is about being creative and designing the spaces that humans interact with. And this is a highly creative career. You can go into the next slide. And as you see here, these are our projects, just sample projects I did throughout the career and during the study years. And as you can see, you have to do a lot of diagrams, a lot of 3D models, some testing for a bridge that's shown there, and focusing on the sketches. Just be very creative in utilizing the tools that the universities provide you with, so you can explore and present your ideas to other people. In this case, we also have detailing of furniture. So it is a very broad experience that you can get during your university, college years. And later on, you can apply those details to big projects like housing, single homes, multifamily, like we were seeing, bridges, and a lot of projects that really impact and have an impact on both the community, nature, and the way that people feel around the built environment. Go to the next slide. And so here you'll see one, or I guess a few of the projects that we have in our firm. And we have, like I mentioned, single family residences over there on the top left corner. It's a snapshot of some of the kitchen areas that you can play around with the design. We also have bridges. Many of you might notice the Petco Park pedestrian bridge right there that was designed by Southeastern Ravinas. And also we do have community type of projects like the library that you see in the middle, the upper middle image. But we also have multifamily residences that allow you to be creative and impact larger communities with one single project. We also have in the upper right corner the Access Youth Academy, which is targeted to young adults and kids to go through this academy and allows them to get a career in different areas throughout their life. Also, we have the opportunity as architects to impact communities with, like you're seeing here on those public restrooms on the right side middle image there. It's a smaller project, it's a smaller scale, but it has a great impact on people visiting the beach. So you have that opportunity to go small scale, but also go large scale, like you see in that lower right image. That one is a mixed use project that you can have housing integrated with commercial, restaurants, and a lot of places that people can visit. And in that case, in particular, it's connected to a trolley station. So it has a great impact of people coming from the trolley and visiting these commercial spaces and activating the streets, activating the community. So that's a glimpse of what you can do as architects. You have to be very creative, be very passionate about it. It requires a lot of effort. And I think the next speaker, Kaylee, is going to present you what the student life of an architect is really about. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Alfonso, and me up to introduce Kaylee Cornejo, who attends Woodbury School of Architecture. It's in one of my favorite neighborhoods in San Diego, in Barrio. So, Kaylee.
Hi, everyone. I just want to let you know I'm here in City Heights, and we have a very thriving alley. So if you hear music, just go with it, and I might start dancing. Anyway, my name is Kaylee Cornejo. I am a fifth-year architecture student at Woodbury University's San Diego campus in Barrio, Logan. I have been attending Woodbury for going on 3.5 years, since 2018, although I have been in school for much longer. In total, I have been a student at 2 community colleges and 2 private universities over the past 12 years in 2 different cities. My personal academic journey has been years and years of classes and projects while also working a part-time job. And finally, after these 12 long years, I am excited to say I will be graduating this May. Today, I will be showing you a few projects I worked on at Woodbury to give you all a look at what we do as architecture students. Unlike the rest of the panelists, these are not real-life projects, but theoretical ones designed for real-life sites, mostly here in San Diego. To help us better understand the social, economic, and environmental impacts of our built environment. People always think architecture is a ton of math, but it isn't. Architecture is researching climates, communities, histories, and the people who will be using the site, and how all these can and will affect its future. Using this information can transform a building from just a physical element into something that has the power to impact people and the environment in many different ways. Next slide. My first project is not local. that's set in the Honey Island Swamp in Slidell, Louisiana. It is a nature observatory designed to float in response to rising sea levels. The technique was to leave the cypress swamp as undisturbed as possible by placing the structure in the negative space between each of the existing cypress trees and on a floating platform that never touches the swamp floor, preserving the existing ecosystem. These images are photos of the physical model I built that have been edited as renders. This project was also my design submittal for the 2018 In Nature 7 International Design Competition. Next slide is an affordable housing and community enrichment project in the Logan Heights neighborhood here in San Diego. I worked with my classmate Amanda Pappas on this project where we used verticality of space to create prototypical units designed with dynamic spaces for individuals and families. These units surround a central courtyard space for community events and social engagement. The image is our SketchUp 3D model placed within a photo collage and edited as a render. And on the next slide, my third project is located in the Midway District here in San Diego and is an attempt at urban design, where I attempted to turn a very industrial area into a pedestrian-friendly and recreational space that also became a phytoremediation water basin. Basically, a segmented basin to clean water flowing from Mission Bay to the San Diego River, through the basin, and down into the San Diego Harbor. This basin would be used for recreational uses such as fishing, kayaking, and also has a small midway beach at its southern end. The site is also connected by expansive pedestrian bridges crossing Midway Drive and the basin. The render shown is a collage of photos that have been edited. And next slide. Finally, my last project is a transitional housing and co-work space designed to create a gradient of public to private. I worked with my classmate Ryan Rosen on this project to create moments for the Mission Hills community and residents of the site to interact in supportive ways through the readaptation of the abandoned Mission Hills Library and the creation of the new residential tower. The images are of our 3D model and renders of the potential use and feel of the central courtyard spaces. And that is all. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to answer any questions.
All right. So as you can see, there's so many different intersections of projects and jobs that we call the field of like the built environment. And, you know, we need to know more about that. So we are going into this next segment where we'll dig deeper with our panelists and ask them about some of their, you know, more years and some other, you know, tips about them. So I'll start this off with the question. What inspired much everyone on this panel to take on the field of interest, you know, you were looking into in your profession today? I think, you know, it's important. You know, as I mentioned earlier, me, it was taking lots, but you know, I want to know what was it that inspired you to become, you know, the you know, profession that you are in your respective fields.
You know, I'll start with that one. You know, I think for me, again, having even at a young age, I think a pretty strong passion for being connected to my communities, just because of all that my community provided me with, right? All the opportunities my community provided me with to learn, to grow, to expand. And then there was also, I think, a tangible feeling like construction and structures in general were something from nothing, right? So I would go somewhere and I would see kind of an open field and then maybe go back into that area, you know, 6 months to a year later, and there'd be a thriving structure providing something to the community. I specifically and vividly remember how meaningful that was to me, even as a young person. And I know that is kind of what inspired me to really direct my attention into this arena. And then as you grow and you get exposed and you understand all that kind of goes into it, you know, for me, it was determining where my right place was in this industry. But I always knew I'm a weirdo from a very young age that I wanted to, in some way, form, or fashion, be a part of the building construction world. Whether my major in school was architectural engineering. At some point, I thought I was going to be, you know, a designer. and then that shifted, but it didn't matter. For me, being a part of what goes into making any type of product that can be lived in, worked in, learned in, was something that inspired me.
Thank you for that, Carmen. I was really motivated by hearing what you had to say. And I feel like, just as, you know, of this question, you know, you have to start somewhere, as far as the, you know, professional side, because on one hand you can take passion for what's around you, but, you know, we still have to take traditional pathways. And my next question is, what educational path does it take to be involved in professions, built environment? Would anybody like to start off with that? I know we got, you know, we was a student, but
yeah, no, I can definitely allude to that. My journey has been very weird. It's been spanning over 12 years, but essentially you can go in after apply to universities after high school and get in that way as a freshman. But I mean, I would recommend, it's a lot cheaper to first go to a community college and then transfer into a four-year university, and then there get your bachelor's degree, which it's usually about a 5-year program altogether. Not 12 like mine, but yeah, so that's, I mean, Alfonso went through the same thing, I think, or similarly.
Yeah, well, in my case, I don't know about you really, but I did it in 6 years because I knew from like 3rd grade that I wanted to be an architect. I just had that passion in me, and I guess I was fortunate to know that for sure. It requires a lot of passion, and the good thing about what triggered me wanted to be an architect is that you have the ability to change the space around you, and you can do that by doing really simple things. Well, they seem simple, but constructing, and it's a whole different story. But you can design things that are simple enough to change a lot of people's lives, and that's something that I really like about the construction industry, design, architecture industry.
So, you know, with that, I recall, you know, earlier you had mentioned how some of, you know, your renderings and designs, you know, were places that were theoretical, right? And, you know, they do become reality at some point, you know, depending on who takes on the design. So the next question I was asked was, you know, what was anyone's favorite neighborhood, you know, place? And, you know, because I as a, you know, planner, I think I would like to share, you know, mine's actually are from one of the places that Kaylee had her sketch in Slale, Louisiana. My place would be New Orleans. I actually didn't always want to be a city planner. I actually was into music. And I think I learned the connection between music and city planning once, believe it or not, this rapper named Jizza, he came to SDSU one day, and he actually talked about like designing certain buildings and places around acoustics, you know, around the sounds that can produce. Actually got to see some of that live out in New Orleans. There's a neighborhood called Treme that you know, is designed around music, and some of those places got shut down because new people in the neighborhood, they weren't used to the noise. So like, who would go to New Orleans and not listen to music? I don't know. That's crazy, but that was something I learned. So for, what is your favorite place or city? It can be a neighborhood, it can be an establishment, whatever it is.
Well, I can dive in there. You know, I think for me, I love my hometown. I love DC, but I actually really love San Francisco. I love the Bay Area. You know, there's a fantastic, I think, mixture of structures, culture, including food, which I am very fond of. And, but there's just such a mixture. You have, the bridge there that's behind you, Edgar, as well. There's just so much happening, so much dynamic culture happening in so many different forms and fashion. You can go in one part of San Francisco and you speak of music, walk down a hill and there'll be like a music festival, just, a pop-up musical festival in the forest somewhere. And then you can also, be in a beautiful building with, tremendous finishes. And then you can be right there at the water, and then you can go across the bridge and be in a really quaint town. So I think for me, San Francisco is just probably one of the most eclectic, most beautiful places in the world. And I wouldn't want to live there because they have cold summers, which is wrong for me. Their August are too cold. But art, cultural, architecture, design-wise, just I think a tremendous place to be and to experience.
Yeah, the Bay Area, I think people forget how true like diverse it is. And it's kind of like one of those like areas that are like multiple cities that like share like a region with San Francisco, kind of like, you're from the what we call what is it, the North Virginia area, DMV, like, so it's like almost similar, and I think that was a connection. And one thing is I want to get serious for a minute again, because I think it's very important, looking to go through careers such as these. I'm looking to, like one of our vets on here, which Edgar, you have tons of experience. And one question I had for you in particular, can you think of an important objection in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I think it really started when I was just starting out at San Diego State University. I was, like I mentioned before, I was the first in my family to graduate college. My folks immigrated from the Philippines. My dad joined the Navy, and that's how he made his way over to San Diego. And they were just ecstatic that I was going to go to San Diego State. And when I got to San Diego State, though, I really wanted to be an architect. And I found out when I got to San Diego State, there wasn't an architecture program. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? I looked at my best friend and I asked him, hey, what are you going to major in? He's like, mechanical engineering. And I'm like, all right, that sounds cool. So I checked that box. And when I started taking classes, all engineering students end up taking the same lower division classes. I ran into a class called solid mechanics, and there was a lot of forces and had a lot to deal with structural. And I went, wait a minute, that's kind of close to architecture. And I dove into it a little bit more. I'm like, oh, civil engineering, what is that? And actually, I unchecked my mechanical engineering box and transferred into the civil engineering program. I think really the hardest thing was I didn't have any guidance. My parents were just happy that I was going to university, and I was really floundering, trying to get from point A to point B, but with really no assistance. And for those of you students out there, there's a lot more opportunities out there for you now to really try to find your career path, and you can get a lot more help. I was blessed and fortunate I made it, and it was just that path was hard, and then really. I worked at, I'm going to really date myself. I was working at Sears for $3.35 an hour. And a friend of mine said, hey, Caltrans is going to be hiring $8.75 an hour, $9. Well, you could do the math. If I can get a job there, it's going to be a lot more money. I can work the same amount of time and get more money. So I was lucky enough to get an internship at Caltrans. And that's really where it piqued my interest, transportation engineering and designing freeways and highways. But my most challenging career point of my career was when I was working on the toll road, which runs through Chula Vista and up and through Spring Valley. That was a design build project. So it was super fast and super crazy. I remember one day I worked, technically you can't do it, 72 hours straight. I think I went home, took a shower, and went back to work. Overcame it. It just you got to put your head down. It happens. And that was probably my most challenging point in my career as a civil
Edgar, if
engineer.
I can just add to what you said, that resonated with my path too. My parents are also immigrants from the Philippines. They were professionals, you know, but I was pursuing a career that they were medical professionals. So they didn't know about careers that weren't doctors, nurses, physical therapists. And so they also didn't know how to navigate the system. And I agree with you, in college, both culturally, it was a point that you don't ask for help, like that's a weakness. But then I also didn't know in the university about like counseling centers, about job and career centers, and that I could go to those places and help them get me internships and job experience that would have helped me find it much easier to get a job when I finished my bachelor's degree, and even when I finished my master's degree. And then having met a lot of other professional first generation born Americans, I've seen that the ones that I think have thrived really well are ones that have been told or shown mentors are really important down your entire career path. So if you find an adult professional that you like, or that you click with, or that you come across, or that you hear a presentation from, you know, really reach out to them, because people always want to help the next generation of students, of people in their profession. I just didn't know how to keep those relationships. So I definitely agree, Edgar, that was a challenge when you didn't have people who knew the path that you were taking.
And you know what, that actually ties into a question, Christy, I'm glad you brought this up. It ties into a question from our audience, actually. And the question is, how has our cultural background and gender identity played a role in our career? You know, we'll focus on the Q&A portion right now. You know, we had some other things to share, but we want to see what the people in the audience have to say. So, anybody start that off? I think, you know, Edgar, you know, started us off well with that, and then Christy. So, what has your cultural background and gender identity done for you?
Personally, for me, it's actually really funny the way I got started. When I was younger, I had an older brother, and my dad, growing up, my dad would always tell him to be an architect, and my mom would tell me to be a dental hygienist. And in high school, I had a friend that we were talking one night, and we were talking about what we're going to do in the future, and he was like, "I'm going to be an architect," and I was like, well, me too. Like, why not? I didn't really know much about it. But after that, I kind of had like a path to focus on. And I like going into community college, I like tested it out, and I fell in love with like the passion and the creativity and the history of it. And obviously it's more of a male field. But as we move further and further, it's now about 50-50, which is really an inspiring thing, and I love it. Like, my classes, if not 50-50, it may be more female. So that's something that I really love about like moving forward into the future, and about the field itself is really, really interesting for me.
Yeah, and if I could chime in on that one as well too, you know, I think I grew up in, my father passed away when I was really young. I grew up in a single parent household, my mom. And so there really wasn't any designated limitations for me because of my gender, right? But I can tell you that as I began to pursue the career that I had chosen, as you can imagine, there was not a lot of females, especially females of color, in the construction world. So, you know, there was a certain degree of fortitude you have to have about where you are, where you want to go, and that, you know, nothing's really going to hold you back. And you want to be real with yourself about it. And so, you know, Christy, when you speak about mentorship, I was so blessed and fortunate. I started my career in New Jersey, but I with a small firm, but I eventually joined Turner Construction, which is one of the largest firms in the country. And I had a female boss and mentor. Her name is Barb Estrin. I don't know if anybody knows her, or, you know, but if you see a Barb Estrin, that's probably the person that mentored me coming into this industry. But she taught me how to make a mistake gracefully, right? Because that's always the fear that, you have to be twice as good. And so if you make a mistake, it's going to be seen twice as bad as a female, right? Because you're already at a disadvantage. And so, she taught me those little small things that allowed me to really be who I was in an industry where you weren't going to see a face like mine in the room, period. Room of 50, I was the only one, period. And like you're saying, Kaylee, things have changed. And now there's certainly more women. I'm hoping to get more women of color in this industry as well. But the barrier now has changed from getting in to now growing in the industry, and seeing those young females in C-suites and operations and executive positions, et cetera, et cetera. But I think for me, it all started with no limitations on the dream that I had, and then having that sponsor, that female mentor, to kind of help guide and direct me. So that is what I try to be to other young people, because that was what somebody was for me, and is of the utmost importance.
Good. Do we have anybody else that wants to add on, or should we move on to the next question? Right. So, do we have any additional questions from the audience?
Not yet, Eric. So I think we can go to our other panelist question.
Right. So I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of show like more visual and like hands-on opportunities related to the professions. And the question that I have is, how can, teens and, students all experience what you all do? So
Eric, we did just get another question in. So I think we can combine these two when people want to provide an answer, which is kind of what advice would you give to yourself now that you have this career? And then maybe just touch upon like how young people can have a better idea of what your career actually looks like.
Great. Thanks, Christy. So who would like to step up?
I can jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Alfonso. Yeah, Alfonso, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, one of the things that is very important for students and professionals is to really have a good time management, because the student, we can procrastinate a little bit, sometimes more than a little bit, and you really have to get yourself in that time management mindset, and to be really organized or better organized, time managing and knowing what you have to do if you have several classes at one point, just trying to get, especially in architecture, like we have the studio classes, which is a lot of time consuming. And I'm there with you, Edgar. I spent like 72 hours in a row just finalizing the final presentation. It was just crazy, but very rewarding. But I guess you learn from your mistakes, right? And I think for me, if I travel back in time, I would just say to myself, hey, time manage, please.
Yeah, I think I hear, time management. Boy, I remember not doing that very well in college at times. So that's great, Alfonso. But, as far as getting to know what we do in general, there are programs like the Mesa Program. The Mesa Program stands for Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement Program. And I know it is offered at Southwestern College as well as San Diego City College and some high schools. And through the Mesa Program, and I've taken a huge part in it. Matter of fact, when I was at San Diego State, I didn't even know about it until my senior year. I'm like, oh man, I could have really used that. Kind of what Christy was talking about. It's like more mentorship. I could have really used them my freshman year. But that being said, that's the reason why I take part now as a professional. But they have a Shadow Day program. And what Shadow Day is it allows students to come to a firm like Rick Engineering Company and actually shadow an engineering professional for a day and really see what they do. In my case, they would sit down with my designers and they could show them how to, how to draft and design on a computer. You can meet our surveyors, you can meet our water resources group. It gives you at least an idea of what civil engineering is about. And if you could take advantage of some of those types of programs that are offered in our region, then that would really help you determine if engineering or architecture is really what you want to do.
Eric, I'll chime in on this one too. I think it's also, I would tell myself, know you are valuable. I think every iteration of me was just grateful that someone offered me a job, and I didn't fight for a salary that I thought I deserved, or I didn't fight for responsibilities that I knew that I could take on, because I felt, I don't know if it was just my background or being female or whatever, I was just like, oh my God, someone wants to offer me a job. I have no right to say, but I have this experience, but I have these other things that make me more valuable. And also to realize that my experience as a first generation born American, my experience, as a minority has value, and that it is an opinion that needs to be heard instead of just sitting and being silent. I think our experiences are often left out of the industry, or often left out of projects when they could make a project better, or they could make a campaign better, or an organization better. But if we don't speak up and share our experiences, then we can't make the change that we really want. And I think there were a lot of moments that I should have spoken up, but I just kept silent for fear of being a different voice.
I can also add what I would maybe say to the younger audience or me when I was first starting. Just because I have such a unique journey that's lasted so long, I'm actually very proud of it and like what has happened over this time span. So I would say everybody's journey is not the same. Some people do it faster, some people do it slower, some people do it in segments. But just keep at it. If you find something that you really love or you think you might love, like stick it out no matter like what happens in life, because life is going to throw you tons of things all the time. I think and if you don't find something you love first, keep trying until you do. Try different things. And if anybody's interested in seeing what we do at Woodbury, we do have some links to Woodbury's live YouTube videos, which we will be showing later. And there's a San Diego campus and also the main campus in Burbank. So there's two different YouTube sites if you guys do want to check out some of our reviews or live lectures and things like that.
Absolutely. The thing I would add to being, planners, we're like the people that bring folks together, is for your neighborhood community planning group. For example, out in City Heights, they actually have a youth seat on their community planning group. And what a community planning group does is, whenever these projects come in, we'll see people like Carmen or Alfonso and Edgar present different aspects of things like street design or building designs, and the community. It's led by people who don't work for the city. They don't work with the government at all, or a firm. Just regular regular residents in the neighborhood. They vote on the designs and construction that come through their neighborhood groups. So for those of the students that are local, Canto Community Planning Group, also known as Troyes Valley Planning Group, has their meeting every third Monday, and they're on Zoom now, and you can catch that and look into that. And I think Heights has a youth seat again, and was just the community coming out because their organizations are so active. And I went to Crawford High School, which is actually out in City Heights as well. So, and I wish I could run a community planning group out of high school. It would have been, an adventure for the things I was learning. So that's one thing I wanted to add. Regarding that last question, I do have one last question for our panel. Overall, in continuance with the advice that people had asked for earlier, what is one thing you wish you could have done differently? No regret, but one thing you wish you could have done differently.
That's a really good question, because I guess hindsight is always 2020. I feel like I was a person that took advantage of programs, but you always come to a point where you say to yourself, I've done enough, right? I think there's certain aspects of exposure or even education I probably would have pushed a little further on. But I'll say that. I'll say this in the spirit of the question you're answering. Be the best you can be, right? Take advantage of all the opportunities that are set before you, and then seek out more. Find your voice. Christy, I think I wanted to jump up and down and give you like a whole, find your voice, accept and embrace your worth and your value, because you are worth it, you are valuable, your voice needs to be heard, and prepare yourself for the future. I think there's no one thing that I would have done differently, but I think I could have done more of certain things, right? And that is just because there's always more you can do, right? And just don't limit yourselves. I think sometimes we become, and don't get me wrong, I understand there's climates out here in the world that you have to acknowledge, but do everything you can do. There's certain things you can't control. You can control the effort that you put in. And so I would just say, don't make excuses for yourself. Put in the effort, climb the ladder, row the boat, whatever it is that you're making up excuses for why you can't do it. Go do it, because it can be done. And if you remove those mental barriers and those barricades, you'll get there. And like you said, Kaylee, stick to it. There is no, your journey is your journey, and don't set false timetables on yourself. Just work hard and persevere, and don't give up. And I know sometimes it seems easier. It sounds easier than it is, but don't allow those mental blockages to keep you from attaining your goals.
Thank you. Oh, Edgar, do you want to add something?
Oh, sure, but that was awesome, Carmen.
Yeah,
ditto. In honesty, I wouldn't change anything, because I wouldn't be the person I am today without all those challenges and obstacles that I had to overcome. And you hear a 4-year degree. I don't know. Our degrees aren't quite 4 years. It took me 5.5. So, but I don't hold that against me. And I just got to push forward, be the best you can be, like Carmen said. I wouldn't change a thing, but I will say, enjoy your education while you're in college. And what I mean by that is there's more to it than just putting your nose to the grindstone and looking at the books and doing your homework and studying for an exam. There's a lot of organizations that you should try out. And be active in your college and university. The civil engineering program, the American Society of Civil Engineers, I ended up being the president. I never thought I would be, because I just used to attend their meetings because they gave out free pizza and soda. I was like, cool, free pizza and soda. But I ended up being the president, and part of ASC, they have a conference where you can compete in the concrete canoe competition, the steel bridge competition. I find that most rewarding. And in all honesty, my good friends that I still hang out with today are people that I met in that organization that that are civil engineers. And that's really what was rewarding. Yes, I got the degree. My folks were happy, I was happy, but those are some of the memories that I'll always take. So that's what I encourage you to do as a student when you go to a college or university, is do more than just all that studying for an exam.
Thanks, Edgar. We are coming up on the top of the hour, so I am going to wrap up. There was a question about internships or opportunities for high school students within the organizations represented on the panel. We don't have time to go through that, but I will say, check back on our Jacob Center social media. We're going to do a wrap up of this event where we'll post the video for anyone who couldn't watch it live, and we will be sure to include any information from our panelists about opportunities specifically, you know, at that high school or early college level. And I will add, internships are a positive experience. I was a geek and loved school and thought grades were enough. And it's my honest truth is it isn't. Like, internships provide you with so much more hands-on experience. That idea of whether or not you're actually going to like it when you actually have to do it. So understanding the value of those, I think, was also a valuable lesson that I've taken away in my path. I thank everyone on my panel for sharing your stories and your journeys and giving us the time and space to, you know, really get personal with us to help the next generation of architects and construction managers and engineers and urban planners, as Eric and I are, really reflect the communities and improve the communities where we live and breathe and raise our families. So thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful Friday, and we look forward to more discussions like this in the future.
Thank you.